Yes, welcome to Home Studio Q&A, episode 11. That's two, but pretend it's 11. My name is Pete, and this is our show here on Studio Live today where I answer your questions about recording in the home and mobile studio. If it's your first time here, I'm not normally sitting on a deck in front of a beach house, but I am on holidays at the moment. Holidays, vacation, whatever you want to call them. That's what I'm doing here. So what I wanted to jump into is I've got a bunch of your questions that I've collected through the week, and I've also got some folks here live on YouTube and Facebook, and we'll be answering those questions as we go through. But I wanted to start today by talking about something, and my feature topic of the week, I guess, which is mobile versus, sorry, recording when you're mobile. How do you record on the go? So, and why would you record mobile? Well, I've been away from the studio, from my house for 2 days, and I've been on the road. I've had my laptop, I've had my iPhone and my iPad, and I've still been able to get a lot of things done. So, I did a video yesterday where I went through 10 tips to help will hopefully help with your mobile recording and how to gather information, how to get song ideas on the go, how to actually record your ideas, how to collect them, what gear, how to use data, all of those sort of things. So we've covered all of that. What I wanted to say in this show today is to not let yourself be limited. So I was setting up to do this show and I'm like, okay, the Wi-Fi here is not fabulous. My camera keeps flapping around in the breeze. I've had to actually put the microphone down the front of my shirt. So if you're listening on the audio version, you'll hear that the audio is not going to be super fabulous, but everything is working okay. And I guess the point I wanted to make is don't let obstacles, don't let things like the fact that you don't have everything perfect, don't let that get in the way of you actually creating and doing things. And whether it's that you do have a really good setup, and then when you're on the go, you don't, or you don't even have a good setup at all, whatever you have is worth it. What I've said a lot, but if you've got a mobile phone or a cell phone or an iPad or a device with a voice memos app, you can start recording, you can start capturing your ideas, and you can start creating music. So I think that's, hopefully that's going to inspire some folks. If you're on the fence, you're like, I do want to create, but I don't have the right gear, or I'm always on the go. There's plenty of ways to do that, and especially these days. I mean, back in the day, if you wanted to be a mobile recording artist, you would have to take a 4-track tape recorder with you, a real, I don't know. Yeah, there was basically no way. Now, in the palm of your hand, you can take your own recording studio, 32-track recording studio in your pocket is exactly what we have here. So, yes, please continue to create. And when you're on the go, there's nothing stopping you. You can keep doing your thing. Alrighty, let's jump in and answer some questions. Once again, for the folks who are here live on YouTube and Facebook, if you do have questions, please throw them down in the chat and we will jump into those at the halftime. I'll blow the halftime whistle and we'll finish answering these questions and I'll jump over to those. So question number one here comes from Chloe Zhu, and Chloe says, I don't have the song project ringtone options. What do I do? So Chloe was asking about sharing GarageBand projects. So for those who use GarageBand on your iPhone or your iPad, if you want to share your projects, you need to actually go into your GarageBand, tap on the share button, and it should pop up ringtone, project, and song. Now, the biggest mistake I see most folks make here is that they're trying to share their song file from the Files app. So here's the trap for young players. If you've ever been on your phone, the actual Files app here on iPhone and iPad looks very similar to, like, so you come in here, it looks very similar to GarageBand. So here you can even go into GarageBand, you can see your projects, you can open your projects, but you're in the Files app. So as soon as you select and you hit the share button down here, it's going to give you that sort of sharing options. It's not going to let you share the project. So what you need to do is make sure that you're actually in GarageBand. So you're actually in the GarageBand app here. And then when you come into your project, you tap it. See, these are not going to share because I've got to download. I happen to pick one that were actually a file. We'll let that download. Oops, it's been pretty quick. Thanks for those on the audio podcast. You're like, what are you doing? But all I've done is gone into GarageBand. I've tapped on that, and then I get the song ringtone project share options. So keep that in mind that if you are sharing a project and you're trying to share your GarageBand project, to make sure you're not in the Files app, make sure you're actually in the GarageBand app, and you'll be good to go. You'll be sharing your files in no time. Let's find question number 2 here. This is from Artist Profiles. I have a question. How can you make your voice sound like old radio? So I love this question, and in fact, I've got a video in the works on this at the moment. So I'm going to do a bit of a video tutorial. But there's actually a really simple way. A lot of it comes down to EQ. So the old radio sound you get is a sound that is super kind of mid-range and treble heavy. So the easiest way to get that sort of sound using GarageBand is to actually remove all the bass and treble from your song. So if you came into GarageBand, I'll do a demo for those watching on the video. If you come into GarageBand and you go to your visual EQ here, all you really need to do is drop down the bass and drag it across until you've removed most of the bass. So everything under about 1,000 Hz. And then you can even do the same on the treble end because you don't get a lot of high end. And that way you create that real mid-rangey sound that can actually sound like that old radio sound. So if you've ever heard those songs, like Green Day use this a lot, I think Foo Fighters have used it in some songs where it sounds like it goes from being like all crackling and old and tinny, and then it just kicks into the full band. I mean, it's a bit of a cliched effect these days, but if you want to try and do something like that, that's the best way to do it, to use your EQ to EQ out the sound that is going to be the bass and the treble, and then you're just left with that horrible mid-range AM radio sound. So hopefully that helps you out if you are trying to do something like that. All right, question here from Abstract Appreciation, something like that. Every time I try to start a new song, I get the message pop up, my song.band couldn't be moved because you don't have permission to access file provider storage. Now, this is a pretty common thing that happens on GarageBand on iOS. And my advice is pretty generic for iOS, but also for every other platform. And that is if you are having troubles with files. So if you are not able to access files, if it's your iCloud drive, if it's on your iPhone, on your iPad, the best thing to do to start with is to log out of everything, to turn off, to turn back on, and to log back in. Often your software just gets confused. It forgets that it has permission to do things that it needs to do, so it actually fails. If you log out and if you log back in again, it can actually just go, oh, that's right, you do have permission to save these files. I can help you with that. So that is my tip on that one. If you're having file-related trouble, the old turn it off and on, the universal fix, that can actually fix a lot more things than you would think. All righty. Next question we have here, and this is about cover songs on YouTube and whether cover songs are legal on YouTube. And the question here is, hey, Pete, thanks for uploading this video. What if I search for songs and then it appears no matches found? Can I still use that song on my video? So this was in response to a video I did where I actually showed creating cover songs and what you need to do to make sure that you can use cover songs and that you have the copyright rights to actually share a song on YouTube. And there is actually a list on YouTube that you can go to that is music policies page. And there's a video, if you search Pete Johns YouTube or Pete Johns copyright, you'll be able to find there's a page there that shows you all these. Now, if your song doesn't appear on that page, if you're unable to actually find it, you're a little bit on your own, because the problem with this, the problem with copyright in general, is that it varies. It changes over time. So there's no way to say, you can use this song now, because if that publisher just chooses to change up the way that they allow copyright in the future, then you're a bit out of luck. So my advice on this one is to just go ahead and do it. More time, 9.9 times out of 10, it's not going to have any sort of violation. Like, you're not going to get in trouble for the copyright, but a lot of the time it might get what's called a copyright content ID claim, which just means you can't monetize. So if you've got a monetized YouTube channel and you upload a cover song, you may not be able to monetize that song, or any revenue you make may go back to the original artist. Sometimes artists get very picky, and particular bands that I won't mention, because even if I mention the band name, it'll probably flag this video and they'll come and block me somehow. Yeah, a lot of bands will actually try and block videos in particular regions. So yeah, there are some times where if you do a cover song, you put all this effort into it and then it gets blocked. Here's my tip for you, especially if you're doing it on YouTube, is to do a quick demo, upload it to YouTube, and just let it sit there for a couple of days before you upload the final version. That way you can be pretty safe that YouTube's copyright claim algorithms going to have rolled over it a couple of times. If it doesn't flag it, if it doesn't give you a takedown notice, if it doesn't give you a claim, then you know you're pretty good to go. So that's my tip on YouTube and copyright. One more, and then we'll jump over and see if we have any questions from folks who are here live. Hopefully the Wi-Fi quality is still holding up. I noticed yesterday I had a couple of little glitches from using the Wi-Fi here while on holidays, but we'll continue on. So Jim Farris says, great, but I'm using an iPad, and once I make new sections, I can't see the whole timeline, and I can only paste one section at a time. So Jim was asking about in GarageBand. I know we've got a lot of GarageBand questions here today because I do about 50% GarageBand questions. So Jim was asking about creating sections. So here in GarageBand, what we can do is we can tap on the plus button and we can create song sections. If you add in a new song section, you get like section A and section B, but you'll notice if you're on your GarageBand, if you're playing along at home, if you tap the very top there, there's an all sections, which means that you can actually view all of the sections together. So if you are using GarageBand and you're finding I can only see one section at a time, I want to be able to see my whole track, just go into your song sections and tap on all sections and you'll be able to see everything. And if you want some more information about that, I've got a video on the channel. Just search my name, Pete Johns, and song sections, and you'll be able to find that one. Let's say good day to the folks that we have here today. So we've got Music GarageBand. Hello to you. We've got John Paul Music UK. Hello, good evening from the UK. I hope you're doing well. Douglas Riley says, Pete, I found this app Medley. You should use it for beats. It's free. Very cool. Always happy to get tips and ideas from folks for new apps to check out. I don't think we've actually got any questions, but let's just say quick g'day. We've got Douglas there, Benedict Stewart's here, Harold Gilchrist is here, Metallion 58 is here. We've got Douglas, I've said hello to already. A bunch of Jade Star is here. Hello to you. Good morning to everyone watching here live. And if you are watching on the replay, don't worry, we love you just as much. If you've got questions that I haven't answered in the past, just drop them in the comments. I'm always down there in the comments answering your questions. And if you get some value out of this one, hit the like button. That just tells me that you want me to continue doing these shows. I personally like Q&A shows because I learn stuff about what I want to know, but I also learn things that I didn't even know that I wanted to know. So that side of it can be pretty fun as well. Question here from Tonio9606 says, is there a way I can use sounds and instruments from my libraries on my computer with GarageBand Mobile as well? If you're not familiar, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but I'm currently using native instrument sounds, and I'm wondering if I can use the DAW in GarageBand Mobile to record these sounds. So the short answer is yes, you 100% can. So what you can do is you can use GarageBand and you can import files into GarageBand. So if we're here in GarageBand, which I'm going to jump into real quick, if you're here in GarageBand, all you need to do is tap on the loops icon, and then as well as Apple Loops, you'll notice a files option in there. If you go into that files option, anything that you have in the folder called GarageBand File Transfer, which is just in your on my iPad or on my iPhone location, you can actually tap and drag in to your project. So it's a little bit clunky if you've got, say, a whole folder full of files that you want to bring in, because you kind of have to bring them in one at a time. There's no way to just dump a whole folder of audio files and then have them index and be part of your GarageBand. However, yeah, there is a way to actually bring them in. So if you've got your files and you want to bring in a particular drum beat and a loop and then a bass sound, then you can bring those in. Excuse me. The only thing that's not so good about that is you can't bring in like actual sounds to use. You can import a sound to the sampler and you can use that, but I know that I think things like Native Instruments have instrument sounds that can be a lot smarter, in that they're basically like an additional virtual instrument. So the other problem is if you bring in, say, a particular bass sample into the sampler, it is going to sample that sound, but it means that as you go higher, the sample gets shorter. As you go lower, the sample gets longer. So keep that in mind when you're doing your sampling in GarageBand and when you're bringing those in. Let's move to the next question here. So this one comes from Crossroads Presbyterian Meccan. Hello. I'm a little confused. The title says iPad/iPhone, but I didn't really see anything about the iPhone, nor did I see any comments that asked about the iPhone. So this was in relation to a video I did. So I will often do videos where I put iPad/iPhone in the title, and then I'll just do the demo on an iPad or an iPhone. The thing is that there's about 90% crossover compatibility between iPhone and iPad, especially in iOS 13. So things like dark mode, things like USB file support, all of these actually cross over between the two pretty much 100%. So there's only a few things in iPad like multiple screens on the one screen and things like that that you can't do on an iPhone. When it comes to anything files related, it's all going to be the same. So you're going to be able to do the same thing if you're plugging in USB drives, if you're powering up audio interfaces to plug in, using USB microphones, everything is going to be almost identical. So if you ever see a video that I do that's a demo on an iPhone and you're like, can I do that on an iPad? Then chances are you can. A few exceptions to that is some apps that are not universal. So unfortunately, a few of the Clevgrant apps that I've demoed that I like to use, like the Stark Amp Sim, only available on iPad, not available on iPhone. So yeah, keep that in mind. I will usually specify and call it out if there is something that is only compatible on the iPad. So thank you very much for your question. Appreciate it. Thomas Legan, hello to you. And he says, new to all this. So yes, I'm going to be that guy that asked the stupid question. And I think I said to Thomas, my usual answer when someone says this, which is there is no such thing as a stupid question. There is a question from someone who hasn't been doing things for a while. We all knew exactly zero when we started out in life, and we all knew exactly zero when we started in music and recording and mobile recording and whatever we're doing. So you will never get any answer from me that says you should have known that, because I say assume nothing because there is always going to be someone else. And if you have the courage to ask this sort of question, then I bet you that there are 10 other people who are just too nervous to ask the question that have the exact same question. Anyway, rant over. How do you stream videos with a second video box to comment on the video you're streaming, like video gamers do? Well, number one is you use something like StreamYard, which is what I'm using on my laptop right here, so that I can pop up a comment here from George Elliott saying, nice setting, Pete. Yes, lovely out here. And you can actually put your comments up there. If you want something a little bit more detailed or a bit more complex or able to do more things with, then OBS, Open Broadcaster Software, is my go-to. So that's what I use for some of my live concert type streamings. And there's things like OBS Streamlabs. There's a bunch of different things. If you look around and you dig around, just look for live YouTube streaming or live Twitch streaming. Try and find some of the software that are used. But yeah, most of them are OBS or variants of OBS, Open Broadcaster Software. If you're doing live stuff and you want to incorporate a bunch of things like this, like I can say g'day to David Anthony, then I can do exactly that. And I'm using StreamYard, very simplified version just here in my browser. But if you want a more comprehensive software, look for OBS. Alrighty, we'll continue on here. We've got a question from Musish Ian. I see what you did there. I hope your name's Ian and you call yourself Music Ian, Musish Ian. Anyway, hi there, quick question. I'm using one of those cheap little iRig clones that have an analog signal and plug in to the headphone jack. Can I use a 3.5mm to lightning adapter and just plug into the lightning port to convert it to a better digital signal, or am I just going to bite the bullet and have to pay more for a better interface altogether? Thanks in advance. So what Musish Ian is talking about is using one of these dongles. And for the people on the audio version, yes, I'm holding up the Apple Lightning to USB, Lightning to 3.5mm dongle. So this is what you can plug in, a 3.5mm device, like one of the cheaper iRigs, like the early version iRigs or the iRig clones, and then plug that into your Lightning port. So all this is doing is converting your Lightning port back into an analog TRRS jack, which some of us would argue should have been left on the iPhone and iPad in the first place. But anyway, that's a story for another day. So what you can do is, yes, if you've got an analog device, you can plug it straight in here and then plug it in. What you're going to get, though, is exactly the same signal as if you went straight into a headphone jack. In fact, probably slightly worse, because it's having to do an extra level of conversion to convert the analog to digital through the cable, through the lightning port, as opposed to going straight into a headphone jack. So short answer, yes, you can do that. Longer answer, if you are looking for better quality, you do need to look for a digital interface. So something like the iRig HD, something like the iRig Pro IO, something like a USB audio interface that you can use via a Lightning to USB adapter. So there's other options. And if you want to find out all of the options, you can go to studiolivetoday.com/gear. Check out my gear guide where I have all of my different gear laid out there that you can take a look at, and all of my recommendations and advice of the stuff that I actually use and have used in the past. A few more questions here before we finish off. Alex, Adventurers, I can't say that name. I'm very sorry. Thanks for that. Another way is using the MIDI keyboard. There are more of hidden sounds on the keys. Try all the octaves and keys. So this sounded a bit cryptic, and that's the problem when I can't show it to the folks who are watching the video. But this was a question in response to a video I did about how to access additional sounds and additional keys when you're playing drums or when you're using strings. And I showed a way where you could go into the edit window in the piano roll editor and move the notes around and change the notes and put them in different places. So that is one way to do it. What this user, I'll try the name again, Aventure Zukunft. What they are saying is what you can also do is plug in a MIDI keyboard. So if you've got a Lightning to USB adapter and you're using an iPhone or iPad, or if you're on a Mac or a PC, you just plug that sucker straight in, then yes, you can use a MIDI keyboard to access different sounds, and it can make your playing not only easier to actually play your MIDI keyboard, but as opposed to using the touchscreen on your phone or your iPad, you can actually access a larger range of notes. If you've got a 25, 49, 61, or even an 88 key keyboard, you can access a wider range of keys, which can really help you out. All right, a couple more questions here, and then I've got a couple of live questions, and then we are going to finish up. So Don Darkos says, thanks, Pete. Yet another great useful video. Since I'm pretty new to your channel, I was wondering if you already made or planning to do a vid specifically focused on mixing. Thanks, and keep up the great work. We need you. Well, I'm here. Good question. I have done quite a few videos on mixing, and this inspired me to do a basics of mixing video. So if you saw that during the week, I did a video called Basics of Mixing in GarageBand on your iPad or iPhone. And that just went through volume, EQ, compression, adding effects, using panning. So all of the absolute fundamentals that you need to learn about when you're mixing before you get in and start doing, multi-band compression and panning automation and funky stuff. You kind of need to get the basics down. So hopefully that one helped you out, my friend. And then I've got other videos where I mix entire songs. So I did, if you check some on the channel there, if you just search my name and mixing, in fact, so search Pete Johns mixing, you'll find a bunch of videos where I mix entire songs. So I mixed my song almost 2 years ago now. I'm trying For the Birds. So I did a whole series where I recorded, mixed, mastered, released For the Birds. That was in March 2018. And I've done other Song in a Month challenges, my Song Timber challenge last year. If you go back to that, if you search Song Timber on the channel, you'll find the whole Song Timber playlist, and you'll be able to check all of those out as well. So hopefully that helps you out. Let's see how many questions I have left. Only a few here, so I might see if we can get through these. We still have about 5 minutes. Hi, Pete. Is the quality of an instrumental or complete song made on an iPhone or iPad equivalent to its counterpart on a computer or complete DAW with more extensive plugins? Or is it slightly compromised version of what you'd get on a computer? And there's more that the user, this is MO, user that asked this question. So I really like this question because it lets me rant on something that I rant on quite often, which is that we are now at the point where the iPhone or the iPad or any other device you have that is recording digital audio is recording the same digital audio that you'd be recording on a laptop or a desktop PC. So whether you're using a Mac or a PC or an iPhone or an iPad, it actually doesn't matter anymore. And here's why. It is digital. So whatever you are sending in there, let's just say that you have an audio interface. So you've got a Steinberg UR22C, because that's my favorite audio interface. You're plugging in a microphone into input 1, you're plugging a guitar into input 2, you're recording those clean signals directly into GarageBand iPhone, GarageBand iPad, Logic on a Mac, and Pro Tools on another Mac, and then like Reaper on a PC, whatever. Those signals, it's actually recording the same signal. Now, some people will say that there's different algorithms for how it interprets those and plays those back. Maybe, in my experience, it's going to be about the same. Where the differences come in is more around the workflow. It's more around the effects you use and the processing that you then add to it. If you're recording a completely blank, completely clean track straight in, and it's converting that analog signal into ones and zeros, those ones and zeros are going to sit the same on any digital device as long as they're recorded at the same bit rate and the same audio resolution. So if you're recording at 24-bit and 44.1 kilohertz audio, which you can do on your iPhone or iPad, you can do on your PC, you can do on your Mac, then you're going to get the same quality. The only difference you may find is that you can't go higher than 44.1 on your iPhone or iPad. You can go up to a 96 kilohertz or 192 kilohertz to record to get better sound. You're going to get giant files. Very few people actually use that, and even fewer people can hear the difference. Once you hit 24-bit 44.1, it's pretty pristine. That's better than CD quality. like CD quality 16-bit 44.1. So you're recording it better than CD quality. So my answer to this question is yes. And in fact, I moved from a PC over to an iPhone and iPad for my recording. Not only did I not see a drop in quality of the actual audio, but because I'm more familiar with the workflow and I can create things and add effects and do things a lot easier, my music improved as opposed to getting worse. So hopefully that helps out with that question. Couple more questions from Castaway Studios podcast. Hello to Castaway Studios. Hi, Pete. A friend just gave me an iPad 4th gen. Any ideas how I can put it to good use in my studio? I've never had an iPad before. Yeah, so this is an interesting one. What if you get an older iPad donated to you or you pick one up? What can you do with it? Is it useful? Can you use it in your home studio? Short answer is yes, but the longer answer is it's not going to support your latest iOSs. So I think the 4th gen is either 9 or 10 that it can get up to. It might even be 10. So you're going to be running some older versions of GarageBand. If you're not already an iOS user and you've never downloaded GarageBand, it can be hard to get GarageBand on there. What I like to use it for is for playback of audio and routing of audio. So because you've got a stereo headphone jack, yes, you still had a headphone jack back in those days, you can actually use it to trigger sounds. So I used my older iPads as when I was doing live sports announcing and any sort of live music, playing back of accompaniment tracks, playing jingles or stings or little bits of audio, things like that can be a really good use of an older device because you don't necessarily need the latest software. You just need to be able to queue it up and hit a button and play it. All righty. And hello to Derek Smith here, who says, yes, the interface and hardware is now your limit in quality, 100%, plus your own playing and the quality of your music. So yes, if you've got a good quality song, then yeah, it comes down to the hardware you're using to play it and record it. And then it's literally got almost zero to do with the actual software you're using now. People like to think it does, but a lot of that is that sunk cost bias, which means that they've spent a lot of time, money, and effort learning a system. They want to believe that no one that's using a free app on their iPhone can possibly get the same quality as the system that they've used. And it is. So David Anthony says it's the golden age of mobile home recording. It 100% is. I often say, the way I say it is, we're living in the future here. And yeah, it is amazing what we can do living here in the future. I feel bad for the people who lived in the past. Final question here that we have live here, which is from Seon. Have you used Jam Session in GarageBand between your iPhone and iPad? No. And I've said this before, that Jam Session is the only feature I think that I've never explored on GarageBand. I need to do it. But what Jam Session does is it sets up a jam session between two different devices on your via Bluetooth. So you can use two different devices using GarageBand and both be jamming along. Now, what I've heard from people who have used it is that the latency on Bluetooth is pretty extreme. So it can make it quite difficult because you're trying to play along and it can be out of sync and out of time. That being said, I kind of need to just try it. Now that I actually have my daughter who's 10 and she uses GarageBand quite a bit, I think, Jazz, I think you and I need to sit down and try out, and maybe I'll do a video on that. Maybe we can do a live video of us trying out the jam session on our iPads. That could be kind of fun. All righty, that is going to do it for this one. I hope you got some value out of this. I hope I answered some questions that maybe you have, or maybe they're questions you didn't even know that you had. Like I say, that's what I like about Q&A. Sometimes you hear things and it just sparks ideas and it gives you creative ideas to do different things yourself. So hopefully that was the case here today. If you did get some value, whether you're watching on the podcast, the YouTube video, the Facebook video, hit the like, do the subscribing, comment on it, send me an email, do whatever. I would always love to hear from you. And if you have your own questions about mobile, home recording, anything to do with the music creation process, then please let me know. Would love to answer those on a future show. Thanks again for watching, folks, and I'll see you next time.